I ended up getting fired a year and a half after working there. And I couldn't understand why I got fired until I had my own business. And it was people that I had hired that were extremely good at their job, but they did not mesh well with everybody else. And they didn't bring out the best in everybody else.
My name is Detavio Samuels, and welcome to the Blackprint, where I sit with the innovators, disruptors, and change makers. My guests open up about every step of their journey and share lessons learned along the way to provide creators, entrepreneurs, and executives with a tangible blueprint for navigating to the top of their industry. This is the Blackprint. Welcome to the Blackprint. Here, we talk to the innovators, disruptors, ceiling breakers about their innovative paths and climbs to the top. As I always like to say at the beginning of every show, everybody sees you on the mountaintop. Not everybody sees you on the climb. This is the show where we talk about the climb. Today, I'm so excited to be sitting here with my guest, DonYé. The audience already knows I don't introduce my guests. I'll let you do your own humble brag. At REVOLT, we believe that you should control and own your own narrative. And so from your own words, let the people know, who are you? Who's DonYé?
Hello, I'm DonYé. I'm a creative director. I'm an artist, and I'm also an educator, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I've been watching your career. It seems like you've had so much phenomenal momentum, specifically in the last few years. But what I want to do is go back to the beginning. Can you start off with kind of telling us a little bit about your upbringing? Where did you grow up? What was home like? Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I was born in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay.
I moved with my aunt and my uncle when I was 4. My mom battled with drug addiction pretty bad. She was unable to raise me. Did not really have a relationship with my father. He was in prison for the majority of my life. So I moved to Prince George's County, Maryland, to get a better chance at life and to live with my aunt and my uncle. I loved growing up in Maryland. I didn't know that, outside of Maryland wasn't as diverse until I got outside of Maryland. Maryland was predominantly Black. And I think...
If you're in PG County.
Yeah, PG County is very, very Black. And I think that has just had such an imprint on who I am as a woman and what I use to inspire me to create my art. So growing up in PG County was amazing. Wasn't really a creative space. You had a lot of people that worked either in the government or they worked in education. I was raised by educators. My aunt is a retired assistant principal, an ex-speech pathologist. So she always was making sure that my folders were color coded so I didn't forget my homework, and always implementing systems to kind of support my growth as an individual. So, yeah.
Okay, so I want to go into 2 places. The first one is you talk about what it was like growing up in all Black spaces and then learning that the world maybe didn't look like that everywhere.
Yeah.
Today, as you reflect back, how important was it for you to grow up in an all Black space? And what is the impact that it's had on kind of your view, your lens, and your perspective in terms of the work that you do?
I think when people grow up in diverse areas, sometimes it can be hard to connect to your identity. I think growing up around Black people, my Blackness was never a question and I never had to question it. So I had a different level of confidence about my identity and my culture because it was all around me. My teachers were Black, principals were Black, people at the grocery store were Black. So I never felt isolated or indifferent or treated differently. So I think that has just really cultivated the confidence that I have now as a Black woman and why I'm able to be so unapologetic when it comes to my Blackness.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing I want to jump into is you made this notion of where you grew up in PG County.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily the most creative space,
Mm-hmm.
but you got into your kind of creative bag really early on. So tell me a little bit about that and how did you actually get started in a creative world and when you were surrounded by things that weren't super creative?
I think music was my entryway to creativity. My aunt and my uncle, they have children of their own. They're older. So my big cousin, Erica, she was a huge Aaliyah fan, Kanye West fan. whenever I missed the bus, she would take me to school.
Okay.
So she would always play Aaliyah, and different artists from the R&B era like that. And I would just always like, I feel like that trained my ear. Like that was my first real, exposure to music at that level. My aunt and my uncle, we would go to church every single Sunday. Byron Cage was the musical director at my church. So I think music was my entryway into creativity. And even from there, watching 106 in Park when I got home from school. And then when that internet era came, I was in middle school. And MySpace was the way that I started expressing my creativity. I used to try to make my layouts look like the music videos that I watched. And after a while, the kids at my school was like, DonYé, can you make my MySpace page look like yours? And that was actually my first side hustle.
Like, how old are you when this side hustle starts?
2007. I was born in 94. I'm really
13.
bad at math. 13, yeah, 13. So early teenager. I'm still figuring out myself creatively, but I think when you are able to express yourself through a medium, it makes you learn about yourself because you only create what it is that you're inspired by. So everything was always like musically inclined or look like a music video to me. So yeah.
Okay, so you talk about how sometimes when you're going through the creative process, it can be a good way for you to learn more about yourself. You're young, you're 13 years old, kind of going on this creative journey for the first time. Do you think you were creating for yourself, as you were saying, to kind of better understand your identity and uncover who you were? Were you just creating to create because you thought it was fun? What do you think was the key driver back then behind your creativity?
I was just creating to create, and I always just wanted to be different. Like even in middle school, I wore uniforms. So I was always trying to find different ways that I could make myself stand out. I hated feeling like I look like everybody else just with everything. I've always had that in me, to just go the opposite way. So I think when I was younger, I was just creating just to create. I was just doing things that I thought made me more unique. And I think people were drawn to that because I think everybody has this intrinsic feeling to want to be different or to want to be unique. So I think that's kind of how it started. I was just doing it. Yeah.
I think all of us are built unique, right? Like I firmly believe that God has created all of us to be very beautiful, unique, distinct individuals.
Yes.
I think that this world often makes you feel like your uniqueness doesn't work, right? So they're always trying to push you to conform to some sort of way of being. What do you think gave you the confidence or the wisdom at such a young age to live in your uniqueness, to chase your difference, as opposed to trying to fit in, which is what most, you would think of a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers trying to do. Why did you not have that drive to fit in?
I feel like I was already different, especially, being raised by my aunt and my uncle. I was different from a lot of my peers already. And my aunt always just gave me the freedom to do whatever it is that I wanted. And she never made me feel like changing my mind was a burden. Like it would be times where I was like, oh, like piano classes seem cool. Put me in piano classes 2 weeks later. I'm like, I don't like this no more. She'd be like, okay, you don't want to do it no more? Fine. Like that was always her energy towards me. And I feel like that's why even now as a creative, I'm able to flow through and pivot so much because if at any point I'm not happy or I feel like I'm not getting fulfilled, I can go to something else. I think that is what kind of created that confidence.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you got that lesson so early on in life. So you're doing your thing. You're on MySpace. You're making your own pages. You said it becomes a side hustle. So what's the hustle part of it?
$10 for a MySpace page.
It's
like
$10
that,
for
yeah.
a MySpace
Like
page. Okay.
I'm just like I just want to get snacks on the vending machine in middle school, and even that evolved into me burning CDs on LimeWire. Because again, like going back to the music part, I always felt like my musical taste was a lot more mature than my peers because I had my cousin Erica and my cousin Brian putting me on to like UGK, Devin Adu, Kanye West.
You went back to Devin Adu. Okay.
Yeah, he. I feel like I got the best of both worlds from both of them. So yeah, it went from MySpace pages to CDs with my taste level, and I think that's when I really discovered that my taste level is something that people want access to. Yeah.
Did you, I'm such a big believer in, like, I love that you're using this word, like your taste level, right?
Mhm.
I think that that's such a wonderful thing that can differentiate us. Back then, how were you refining your taste level? How were you really discovering what set your soul on fire, the type of work that you liked back in those days?
Tumblr. I feel like Tumblr was like this endless creative bottomless pit. And I think I always like to say, like, that's when the internet wasn't so evil. And it was a lot more pure and genuine. So I felt like, based on what it was that I liked and what I was engaging with, Tumblr was showing me the elevated version of that. So exposing me to different creatives in New York City and LA. For a time, people thought that I was from New York because I have followed so many creators on Tumblr that were from New York, and they inspired the way that I dressed, the way that I took my photos, and everything. So I credit a lot of my taste level when it comes to the visual aspect of creativity to Tumblr.
So you're in your creative bag, you're catching inspiration from the people in your house, you're catching inspiration from the music you listen to, from Tumblr, but you're also starting to make money. At that point in time, to you, was your entrepreneurial, like, energy being set on fire? Were you excited about making the money, or were you still just more focused on the creative side? Were you sitting back going, all right, I made $10. Let me see if I can make this 1,000, or were you still just really focused on the creative process?
I was really just focused on the creative process. I never looked at creativity as a way to fund my life. You know, at this point, I'm still living at home. I don't got no bills. I'm just like, this is enough money so I can go to the movies with my friends and get the extra snacks or whatever. Then that was enough for me. I wasn't thinking about it like, oh, I'm going to save my money and invest and do this. That did not come until, I would say, like 6 or 7 years ago, when I really was like, okay, I'm gonna flip the switch.
Okay, so as you're chasing this kind of creative thing, the entrepreneurial piece is nice. It allows you to get some extra chips or something like that from the vending machine. But there's this place where you start to train yourself, right? Like, you start to train yourself on, I think it's Photoshop and other things. What makes you start to say, it's time for me to take my actual work to the next level?
I think life and capitalism. You know, I was in college. I worked a job in college, and my job, even though I had a job and I had support from my parents, it still felt like it wasn't enough, because I like nice things. I like looking nice. I like having my hair done. I like nice clothes. And when it comes to really unique items, I'm like an impulse buyer. Like, I love just buying things that I feel like reflect my taste level. And in college, you know, I have freedom. So I'm like, I need more money to buy the stuff that I like. How I'm gonna make more money? Okay, like, I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna do this. I even had a resume building business in college. I would make people's resumes on Photoshop, customize them, and everybody was just getting, like, I was known for the girl, like, if you wanna get a job, you get a resume done from DonYé. So I was combining my writing skills, my intellectual skills with my design skills to make people look better on paper and make them stand out. So yeah, I did that. And even in college, I didn't major in anything creative because I wasn't exposed to creative careers growing up. My aunt was an educator, and my uncle, he was an auditor. He worked for the United States government. So I didn't believe that I could make a living off of my creativity. So I went to school for healthcare management because my grandmother, who had raised me before my aunt and my uncle took me in, she had suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia. So she was in the nursing home for a good majority of my life. And I remember just going to visit her, and I just hated the facilities. I hated everything about the nursing home, like the uniforms, just how everything was set up. And I've just always been inquisitive. I'm like, how could I make my own nursing home? So I connected the dots. I'm like, oh, a degree in healthcare management would help me do that. So that was my inspiration for my major going into college.
Yeah, but even like a lot of people, I love that story because a lot of people would have said, let me go in and impact this industry.
Yeah.
You were saying, how do I build and design something new? You saw a problem and you were already thinking about, how do I solve this problem for other people?
Yeah.
Which is just a testament to your ability to do creative problem solving, which you've kind of showcased throughout, your whole career. Okay. Before we get into that piece, I just want to dive one piece into, you taught yourself Photoshop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you do that? So I fell in love with photography a few years ago. Same thing, kind of decided that I wanted to be able to edit my own photos and do my own work. I'm a big believer in the idea that it takes 10,000 hours to be great at anything.
Yes.
And so I know that whenever I embark on a journey, it's going to take me 10,000 hours to be great. And so I run really fast to try to get those 10,000 hours kind of out of the way. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your journey to teach yourself Photoshop. What did you use? How were you doing it? How fast were you running?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever I have a vision creatively, I think about what tools I can use to execute that vision in the most efficient way possible. And Photoshop was what I found. I was just Googling, how do I edit my photos? How do I remove the background from my photos? And that's what started the tutorials. I would Google or go on YouTube and say how to take the background out of an image on Photoshop. So then I would see that, and then I'm like, okay, I got the background out. How do I put one in? Like, so anything specific that I wanted to do to my image or creatively, I would just type into YouTube and learn how to do it. And then after time, the education just compounds and you're like, oh, like I learned this in another tutorial, but now I can do it over here. And the more I learned, the more my imagination just started growing and growing. And next thing you know, I went from editing my photos to making logo designs. I started falling in love with typography, how fonts look. I'm the type that would spend 20 minutes trying to find the perfect font because I think it is that serious. It does matter that much. So Photoshop and learning it really helped to cultivate my design language and how I show up visually.
When you're working on your design language, when you're going through this kind of Photoshop exploration, do you sleep? Like I always I can't sleep until I get to a certain level of goodness, meaning I recognize that in those first 1,000 hours, so much of what you create is going to be crap.
Yes.
Like I want to get out of the crap phase as quickly as possible. So
Yeah.
I'm just going. Like, do you sleep during that phase? Is your mind obsessed with Photoshop?
I'm a very empathetic creative. And sometimes it is my downfall because whatever I see or whatever I love, I take it and I put it inside of me. So I had to learn how to filter things that I would see that I would say, oh, like this is cool, but that's cool for them. Like it's not my brand. It's not my visual identity. And I think me practicing on Photoshop taught me that subconsciously, because it would be things that I would see on Tumblr, or if I saw a really cool ad or like a billboard, I would try to mimic that and then I would do it and I'd be like, this looks good, but it don't feel like me. And I think that is really where I was able to really hone in on how I show up creatively and making sure that everything that I do, it feels like me and not just looks good.
I wonder if there's a way for you to dimensionalize the difference between something that looks like you, but then something that looks like you and feels like you. Can you tell me what that difference is?
Oh, I would say anything.
Is it a feeling? Is it an intuition?
It's a feeling. It's a feeling. It's like, even sometimes when I look at photos, the photo may not be the clearest image of me, but if I feel like it captures my essence and my personality accurately in the place that I believe that I am, then to me, that is a DonYé creation. So I'm really big on feeling and emotion and making sure that regardless of the optics, I mean, I want it to look good too. Like that's like table stakes. Like everything should look good, but if it doesn't feel good, then I think it's just vanity. It's just there.
Mm-hmm. Last question on that. I'm wondering when I listen to you talk about how things feel, is it a certain emotion? Is it an energy? Are you excited? Are you thrilled? Is it a certain thing that pops up?
It's like, it's peace. It's like like even the other day, when I had left the White House, I was upset a little bit because I felt like the images that I had from that day didn't reflect how I felt that day. And I was like, I need to boss up. I need to just get my own personal photographer because I cared too much about my photos to not have a personal photographer. But after looking at them, I'm like, you know what? Like, this is where it no longer becomes about me. It's more so about the image that I'm setting and the perception that I'm building around being a Black woman in creativity. And I think that's what I'm learning a lot right now in this part of my journey, is that my pride doesn't really have a place in the legacy that I'm building when it comes to certain things. So I'm getting more comfortable with the feeling, like putting the feeling more before the optics. Because before it was both. Like I needed to look great and feel great. But now I'm getting to a point in my career where I feel like the feeling kind of supersedes the optics, especially right now in a world where everything is so optic based. I think people are connecting more to emotions and feelings. So
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because I think quite often you see creators, builders, designers fall in love with perfection. Like they're always trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they can't find peace until things are perfect. And you have kind of separated these things out where sometimes the thing can be perfect, but I'm not at peace.
Yes.
And I will always choose peace. How does this reflect on my legacy? How does this reinforce the story and the brand of who I will always go for peace over perfection?
Yeah.
Which I think is very beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, so let's jump back into college. So you're in college. You didn't know about creative fields. You didn't believe that creative fields could pay for your career or pay for the lifestyle that you wanted. So you're in the healthcare space. What happens to kind of get you back into, I know you never left. What happens to get you into creativity as a potential career? Because that happens in college as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I was a Mountain Dew girl.
A Mountain Dew girl? What's that mean?
The Mountain Dew girl, they would be like, we had to wear like Mountain Dew uniforms, and we would go to like the cool activations that were happening. We were basically like the college reps for the brand.
Okay.
And one of the events that I had to work, it was a launch for Rihanna's Puma Creeper. And she launched, this was her first ever shoot with Puma. And I was there and I loved the event so much. I actually wanted the shoes. I actually got a pair of the shoes. But while I was in line, this woman behind me starts talking to me. She's like, oh, like, I like your outfit. Like, what do you do? Because I remember how I said I would wear uniforms, but I would always like jazz up my uniform. I feel like she saw past my uniform and she saw that I had like a little bit of swag. So long story short, we're talking. And at the end of the conversation, she tells me that she's the director of marketing for the location that we were in. It was a place called Shoe City, which is basically like a downtown locker room or Foot Locker. And she invites me to the office the next day. Mind you, I'm a full-time student. I skipped class to go to the office. And I remember walking into the office and just being so like taken aback by people that look like you working at a computer. I had never seen anything like that. Like people in Nike Techs, Jordans, just looking fly and cozy and chill, but also getting work done. I thought, business meant suit, tie, all of that. So off the rip, my eyes was really green. She sits me down and she's like, so what do you think about our social media? What do you think about our website? And I'm like, I mean, it's cool. I would probably do this. I started talking about the model selection. And these are just things intrinsically that I was mentioning because now I have had, almost a decade of just making my own things and creating my own design language and my own perspective on creativity. So I'm speaking from the heart. And at this time, I wasn't really making creative things for big brands or big people. It was all just the homies. So it was still love in everything that I did. And I think the opinion that I gave her, I feel like she felt that it was coming from my heart, but it also made her look at her brand from a completely different perspective. So she offered me a job on the spot. She wanted me to be full time, but I told her that I was in school full time.
Right.
Yeah, so
tuition checks.
Literally. So I asked if I could come back. I wanted to see if I could rearrange my schedules. I had classes every single day. So I went to my counselor the next day and I was like, look, I got this really good opportunity to work at this company, being the marketing manager. Is there anything I could do with my schedule? So she put all of my classes Tuesday and Thursday. And this is in the middle of the semester. I always feel like there's a way. Like, I don't believe in, no, you can't do that. It's somebody there that can change your life or make something happen. So she put all my classes on Tuesday and Thursday, and I worked 9 to 5, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, being the marketing manager. And that was in 2015. And that was I would say, like, really like my launching pad.
Mm-hmm. You walk into this space, and for the first time, you get to see that creativity can be a path that puts money in your pocket. Like I always say, like, representation is the lens through which we dream, right? So once you got to see it, you immediately had that dream.
Yeah. What
I want to really figure out is, it's a really amazing story. What made you in that moment decide that I need to rearrange my entire course, schooling, schedule, et cetera, for this opportunity? Why did that opportunity leap on you and say, I got to change everything so I can make this work?
Just how I felt walking into that office. Like, school, I always felt like it was something that I just had to do. I never really questioned it. It was just like an innate thing that I think a lot of kids feel like they have to do, especially when, you have parents that are so so I never looked at school as like an option. So this job to me felt like the first time that I had say over my life and what it was that I wanted to do. And it was very exciting. And I like feeling good. So I'm like, you know what? This is going to make my time in school 10 times more fun if I'm able to learn and get my degree, but also work this really cool job that's going to put me around people that inspire me. I wasn't really inspired when I was in college. It was just, where I went to school, it wasn't a creative school. People were there for nursing, economics, so going to this job, it actually made me be like, what am I going to wear today? Versus going to class, people would come in pajamas. I didn't go to a HBCU. HBCUs is different. It's a fashion show every single day. When you go to a PWI, it's not the same. So that's what really made me say yes to that position, is because it just made me feel alive. It made me feel good. And that was another indicator of this is where I need to be.
Yeah, I think as we grow up and mature, at some point in time, we find our own agency, right? So when we're young, a lot of times it's our parents or our guardians or whoever who are kind of setting the path for us. And at some point in time, we decide to choose agency for ourselves, right? Some people choose it young. You sound like you chose it really young. Some people don't find that agency until they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s. Yeah. But you found that agency and immediately started chasing your passion, right? So tell me just a little bit about what it was like working there. Did you get what you wanted? Was it everything that you expected? You went back and rearranged your entire schedule for it.
I think
what ended up happening?
So context, that was my first ever creative corporate job. All of my jobs before that, I had worked at the scholarship office, just making sure the kids had the GPA to get their money. I worked at the student office building, so managing the lost and found. I never had a job that really challenged me. It was always just like a paycheck. This job was like, oh my God, I have to actually do work and work with people. Oh my goodness. So in the beginning, it was everything that I wanted. And I pretty much did everything. So I was the youngest person on my marketing team. I was the only girl on the marketing team. And I learned a lot about culture, company culture, and how when you're working on a team, sometimes it doesn't matter how talented you are or how much you know. It's about how well you mesh with the other people on your team. And I think that was really where I learned the qualities of a good leader. I thought that I was a good leader because I knew the most, but I didn't do a good job of educating the people that I worked with. And I ended up getting fired a year and a half after working there. And I couldn't understand why I got fired until I had my own business. And it was people that I had hired that were extremely good at their job, but they did not mesh well with everybody else, and they didn't bring out the best in everybody else. So that was when it clicked. I'm like, oh, that's why I got fired. And it was this, I remember this meeting so vividly. I was pitching for us to go to Coachella, and I had walked into the pitch. I had spent like all night working on this presentation. And the first slide, I have a question, and it was from the guy that ran the e-commerce side of the business. He was about maybe like 55, 60, had a wife and kids. He was like, "What's Coachella?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's Coachella?" Like, I'm in college. I'm like, "You guys don't know what Coachella is?" And that moment taught me the importance of education, because I should have educated him and the rest of the people that were in the meeting what Coachella was, instead of assuming that everybody knows. And I think that's what a lot of innovators need to realize. You're going to see something that a lot of people are not going to see. And if you want people to invest in your vision and you want to get buy-in, your job is to educate people on why they should care about what it is that you're pitching. So, I wasn't good at pivoting. I didn't know how to pivot the meeting. And the meeting basically just went downhill because I had put so much emphasis on Coachella, but never thought, what if nobody knows what Coachella is? So, that's why I think education is such a huge part of my creative career right now, is because I want everybody to understand why I believe something is valuable.
Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that leadership is anchored in followership. Mm-hmm. And so as a leader, we often think that it is our job to set the vision and to set the strategy. But if nobody follows you, then you go nowhere, right?
You go nowhere.
And it sounds like you've really tapped into this reality that in order to get people to connect where I'm trying to go from where we are, I have to do this education thing and make sure that I'm bringing them every step of the way.
Yes.
Okay, so you got fired. So mind blowing, because first you got hired on the spot.
I know.
Then you got fired
the same
like 18
woman
months.
that hired me. Oh my God. The same woman that hired me was the one that fired me. And yeah.
How did it feel? Do you remember, if you go back to like?
Oh my God, I remember that day. I cried. Mm-hmm. It was so, number one, it was embarrassing. I was in the office, and you know what? I felt it. Mm-hmm. I felt it coming. Like, you can always feel when that hourglass tips over, you know, people start making really specific comments. You feel like everything that you do is wrong. I remember one day, everybody knew I was a big fan of Kanye West, and Adidas was one of our clients. One of our accounts. Our account manager gave our office tickets to go see Kanye West, and there wasn't a ticket for me. And I mean, I already had my ticket because I was going to see Kanye regardless. But at that moment, that's when I was like, dun, dun, dun. And then like a week later, you seen that meme where, Lisa Simpson is on a computer, and then the mom comes, put her hand on her shoulder, is like,
oh yeah.
That was me. I was at my computer, and it was like, yeah, DonYé,
this is their time is up.
Oh, I remember they said, you've been fired at will. And I was like, what does that even mean?
What does it mean, just for people watching now? Do you know?
Being fired at will means that a company can let you go for no reason. Like, they don't have to explain to you why you got let go. So that was, I remember like leaving. I was crying while like getting my stuff together on my desk. It's just embarrassing. It's like taking a walk of shame. But I reflected like that whole day, and I just couldn't wrap my head around why I got fired. But I give myself like a day to be sad, but then after that, it flips into, okay, now I just got to boss up.
So let's talk about that boss up. Let's talk about the pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So you get fired, you're heartbroken, you're crushed for 24 hours. You gave yourself one day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then start to flip into what is next? Like, even like, what is, when you say you only give yourself a day,
mm-hmm.
what is the next day supposed to be for you? Like, how do you switch and change your energy? Is there something that you
I act like yesterday never happened. Yesterday never happened. I feel like, and now my window of when I switch that is a lot shorter. Sometimes it may only be 30 minutes or an hour, but I don't like to stay in that mode because it forces you to think about things that you cannot change, like the past. And I like to reflect, but only reflect to a certain point where that reflection then turns into action and strategy. So I was like, you know what? I had amassed all of these skills from working there. I had directed photo shoots. I had introduced their first ambassador campaign. They didn't even know what influencers were at the time. And again, like this is 2015, 2016. I had helped build their whole influencer infrastructure. I had done activations. I had done all of these things under the creative umbrella, and I had built relationships with people in that area, photographers, videographers, makeup artists, public figures. And I was like, I should just start my own creative agency at this point. And I started it at the time with my ex, who was my business partner. And we had that for about three and a half years. And we were just really focusing on local talent. But all of the local talent was big talent in that area. So one of our biggest clients at the time was Chino Braxton. He's a dirt bike rider. And he was really known for combining the technical expertise of dirt bike riding, which is really, really hard to do, and mixing it in with culture. So he was known for like doing all these crazy tricks. He was like sponsored by Monster. But I met him while I was working at Shoe City. And once I left, he was like, I don't care if you still work with them or not. Like, you hard. Like, I want you to help me with where I want to go for my next phase of my career. So, my agency, we developed his first clothing line. He did not have a product. He just was a public figure. So we created a clothing line that was rooted in his family history. He did everything for his brother that was murdered. So we did like a Long Live True's capsule collection. So all of the marketing, the social content, we did everything top to bottom. And that actually pinged him on the radar of Matt Cook, which is the CEO of Ethica. Chino was an ambassador for Ethica. So Matt was like, wait a second, who is doing your stuff? Because your stuff didn't used to look like that before. Next thing you know, Matt Cook is in my DMs on Instagram, sends me a DM like, hey, like, I like what you're doing. I heard good things about you from Chino. Do you want to fly to California and just meet with me? I'm living at home right now in PG County with my family. I'm graduated. Flies me to California and same thing, offers me a job on the spot.
But you already have your own company.
I already have my own company. Okay. And I made that very clear. I told him I cannot stop doing what I'm doing. But the idea of some type of consistency was very appealing to me because, you know, when you have your own business, especially in the creative world, you can have 2 or 3 good months and then the next 2 months, you ain't got nothing. Absolutely. So this idea of constant income and stability and benefits, health insurance, you know, I'm like, yeah, like, let's do it. And I'm like, I feel like I capped in Maryland. So it was time for me to go somewhere else. So, I get to Ethica, and at that time...
So that means you moved?
Yes, I moved in 2 weeks. Okay. I came back to Maryland. I was there for like 2 days. I told my family, yeah, I'm going to move to California. They're like, what? But they had, at this point, my family knows that I'm a little cuckoo. So they was just like, whatever, DonYé. Like you, right? Yeah, it sounds like me. Yeah, so I ended up moving to California with my ex. Since we both had the agency, we were both together, we were both working, I kind of put him on to Ethica as well. And I'm like, I can't go without him. I felt like it would be a little shiesty.
What gave you the confidence that you could negotiate that, right? So there's a couple of things you're doing. One, you're accepting a role without giving up your company. On top of accepting a role without giving up your company, you're also bringing your co-founder with you. What gave you the confidence or belief that that was even possible? I think a lot of times we believe that things are impossible or improbable, and so we don't manifest them because we don't try to execute against them. Yeah. This is your story is amazing because you're doing things in like 2 seconds. Yeah. You fly, you get a job offer, you move in 2 weeks. What tells you in 2 weeks that I can negotiate everything that I want out of this? I can make it work for me and move to LA, and I'm going to make it happen.
I think it's a little bit of me knowing what makes me comfortable. So I think, I had stability with my agency. I did not want to give that up. So that was like, okay, I'm not, and I went into it knowing what it was that I was not going to give up. I think that is something that I've always been good at, is going into something knowing what I want already, so that it's really hard to sway me unless it's something like I didn't even think of. So I went to California knowing that I was still going to have my agency, and knowing that my partner was going to be able to work with me. And I think when you know something and you tell yourself it, you automatically have confidence in it. And then even going back to how I mentioned with my aunt, she stressed the importance of me feeling comfortable, like even just down to, sleepovers, when she would drop me off at somebody's house for a sleepover. DonYé, if at any moment you want to come home, just call me. So always putting my comfort in the forefront, and anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, I just won't do it. So if the CEO was not going to let me keep my agency, or not going to let me bring my co-founder, then to me it was a no, because then I would be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's how I garnered the confidence to kind of negotiate that. And I'm like, you want me, like you hit me up. And I feel like that's what creatives need to understand. If somebody is throwing the fishing rod out to you, you already have more leverage.
Yeah.
And my aunt taught me that too, and my uncle. He was a professional auditor, so he had to have a lot of hard conversations with people. And he always was just like, just ask for what you want. The worst they could say is no. So
you recognized your power, right? You read the room. You recognized you had the power. They reached out to you, so you had leverage. You understood your non-negotiables and put them on the table. And it sounds like if they weren't willing to step up to your non-negotiables, you were willing to walk away.
Yeah.
And whoever is willing to walk away at the table has all the power, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you have a good run there, but you're not there forever, because you end up starting your own company. So kind of walk me through how we get to the company that you have today on the consulting side.
So I mentioned that I had moved there with my ex, was also my business partner. In hindsight, why would I ever do that? Like,
say more. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think, it takes a very unique combination to be intimate with the person that you're working with. And I think that I can do anything. So I thought that I was one of those people that could do that. But I'm glad that I did, because it showed me, from us being intertwined in all of those different layers, it showed me that my definition of greatness was different than his definition of greatness. And it allowed me to see that we have two completely different visions in the way that we execute our vision. So a year and a half into, it's always like a year and a half. But a year and a half is always, right. A year and a half into me working at Ethica, I just hated everything. I hated everything. I felt like I kept compromising on my definition of greatness. I felt like I was forced to put things out into the world that I wasn't 100% comfortable with. And it started messing with my spirit. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. The relationship wasn't fulfilling to me. I felt like I was dreaming too big, and people were making me feel bad for dreaming as big as I did. And I'm very big at recognizing when something is just not equilibrium for me. So I call it like pulling the rug from up under myself. I don't know why I like doing that, but I feel like whenever I do that, it forces me to just level up. So I quit Ethica. I quit my relationship. I left the agency that we founded, all within a span, I would say, of like 2 to 3 months. It was and we had lived together too. So I had to find a new apartment. I had to do all of those things. But after that, I started Tailored Consulting, which was an agency focused on my definition of greatness. And I had that for about 2 years. At the end of the second year that I had it, I got Forbes 30 under 30 for marketing. And my best friend, Alamide, she's my best friend now, but we actually met because she was my first client of Tailored Consulting. She owns Topicals, the #1 skincare brand in Sephora. But she had found me on the internet and was like, I love your work. I love what you do. I'm launching this really cool company. And I really need somebody that is going to help me generate really cool ideas to help my company stand out. And we developed our friendship, developed my relationship. I had so many clients come from that one relationship. And I think it's just a testament of what happens when you just put all the chips on you. It's like you cannot lose. Like if you know you only got one draw four in your hand, that's it. You're going to be looking at everybody else's hand, seeing what they got. So you can time that draw four perfectly.
Yeah.
And me taking the rug from under myself was me putting that draw four down. Here I am.
Yeah, it's a strategy that I've seen work a lot of times. I talk about it in terms of like burning off ships. There's I think a Roman emperor who, when he would send an army out, ships, boats to whatever land they were going to go conquer, he would then, once they got on land, burn all of the ships so that there was no return. There is no way back, because to your point, the only way forward is either we're going to find our way through this mess, right? Or we're going to die, but there's no going home.
It is no going home. Yeah. And I feel like I ripped the rug from up under me to kind of burn those ships. Like that's like me burning the ship. So I know that I'm here now. This has to work. It has no other option but to work. And I feel like I put myself in that position so that I can have that mindset.
Okay. How long ago did this happen?
That was late 2021.
Is it working? All right, so let's talk about what's working. You're going from this world where you decided to leave Ethica. You decided to leave your own consulting company. Now you're building for yourself. A lot of times when we build for ourselves, we need that brand. We need some sort of marketing engine to help make whatever asset, whatever new idea we're trying to give to the world pop. At this point in time, do you already have a significant following? Are you working on building your following? How are you thinking about your personal brand and the social media platform that you have?
I didn't really have a huge following. I had like a moderate following. I would say maybe like 20,000 at that time. I thought that was like moderate, but people weren't really engaged with me. Like I had followers, but I didn't have a community. I think followers and community is two separate things. I think when you have followers, you have people that are like looking at you, but your community is people that are watching what you do. They're inspired by what you do, and they're connected to what you do on an emotional level. So I started building my community around 2021 when I had launched my newsletter called To Whom It May Concern. And my newsletter was a way of me just sharing my insights on the creative world without having to worry about likes or followers or shares. And on top of that, I wanted to own my audience. I didn't like the fact that if Instagram were to shut down one day, I could not access my audience. So I would just put out insights and do different breakdowns or analyses on what I was seeing going on in the marketing world. And people started recognizing my perspective and the way that I looked at things, the way I thought through things. So that's when I started getting a real following, a real community, because now people were sending my page to other people like, oh, if you're creative, you should definitely follow DonYé. She's really inspiring and motivational. Or if you want to learn more about marketing and branding, follow DonYé. Look at this newsletter. So now I was creating content that was shareable and people took pride in and wanted to share it with their people in their community. And that's how I got a lot of my clientele. It was a lot of brand owners and public figures that were looking for ways to express themselves in a more unique way. And all of my newsletter content was a way to do that. And it started trickling down into my social content on Instagram, Twitter, and public speaking was a huge part of my personal brand journey. So from doing my newsletter, people started to hire me and say, oh, like, can you talk about this philosophy at this keynote presentation? Or can you do a workshop about this here? So people started using my newsletter kind of like as a curriculum to hire me to teach and educate through public speaking. So those two things were going in tandem for about 2.5 years.
If you were going to give anybody advice, I love this notion about the differentiation between followers and community. I think I'm going through a bit of that myself. Certain things that I posted are very core to who I am. I'm watching that I will lose followers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now just posting those things on purpose more frequently because you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're not down with what's core to me, you shouldn't be here. But my question for you, so as someone like me is thinking about, I need to flip more of my following into community.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one thing you think I should be thinking about or one place I should be focused on? Like, how do you actually do that? Flip from followers to community?
I think you have to reposition your content from a value perspective instead of an aesthetic perspective. So aesthetic is more so like, is this cool? Does this look cool? Does this feel cool? Value is, what is this content doing to enhance my life? What is this content doing to shift my perspective? And I feel like I've always been good at that because I have that educational piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody likes learning. Everybody likes getting information that makes them look at something differently. So I always like to do a lot of storytelling, even if it's an outfit. I had posted this video where I was about to go teach and I was like, I'm channeling Miss Frizzle today. Like, so at that point, like, even like you're laughing, like, it's like me just showing my outfit. It's just like, it's an outfit, but me connecting it to Miss Frizzle, not only is it me connecting to a piece of my core that I like because I love Miss Frizzle, I love the Magic School Bus, but I'm also opening an opportunity for people to reimagine the way that they get dressed and how they look at inspiration and how that shows up in their lives. And now at that point, my content is now valuable to them because it makes them look at something differently. Mm-hmm. So that is what I would say is the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. There's a great book called, I think it's called Marketing with Meaning, which is very much rooted in so much of what you're talking about, which is marketing for the future is all going to be based on, are you adding value to somebody else's life, right? Mm-hmm. And you have this consistent track record, whether you were in middle school, adding value to people, college, adding like through your entire career, you've always found a way to not just be your authentic self, but also add value and create value for the people around you.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk about creating value for yourself. So your past jobs, careers, companies that you've started have all been about helping other people launch products, promote products, do whatever that was. Now you're building for yourself. So tell me about this new company and what the inspiration was behind it.
Honestly, well, it was two things that inspired me. I feel like when I got Forbes 30 Under 30 for my consulting agency, it kind of created a fake glass ceiling where I felt like I had reached the top of a mountain, and I don't like being at the top. I like being, I like either being at the bottom and climbing or about to get to the top. I feel like when you're at the top, you can get complacent a little bit. So that moment, I was like, wow, like I am really being acknowledged for the way that I help other people, but I've never helped myself. And I thought to myself, what would me helping myself look like? Like, what would a DonYé product look like? What would a DonYé brand look like if I were to take everything that I've done for everybody else and put it through my lens for myself? That inspired me. And then two, just seeing the digital landscape change. I felt like the same way how the value of the dollar has gone down, I think the value of a following has gone down. I see in the future, people are going to be measured by the buying power of their audience or their community. So can you get your community to buy tickets to see you? Can you get your community to leave their house and go support you at an event? And I'm like, how can I show that? And then I'm like, oh, bingo, product. I need a product. And if I want to achieve wealth too, which is something that I'm also thinking about, I'm going to be 30 this year. I'm thinking about setting myself up financially for my future. I can't be just attached to consulting because then at that point, if I'm not physically doing something, then that means I'm not getting paid. So product was like the next direction or like my life GPS, like go here. But even that, it took me, like at first I thought I was going to do merch. I got this shirt made, like my manager references it all the time. She's like, this is not about to be one of them shirt moments where you just do it and then you scrap it because it's not what you want. Like that will be a forever reference. But I had started with a shirt. And I put level 2 on it because I had been doing a lot of teaching about this level 2 philosophy that I had, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But I came up with the brain because I started thinking about how people recognize me and how people label me. People would always leave comments or write me and say things like, oh my gosh, your mind, or I love the way you think, or I wish I could just tap into your brain. People consider me a brainiac or a creative brainiac. And I'm like, that's the first product. Like it's a no-brainer. And even like just going back to referencing myself and finding inspiration in myself, I had this project that I was pitching for. This is when I had my first agency. They stole my idea mid-pitch. Like they basically was like, oh, like this is good, but we're going to go a different route. And what I pitched, they end up using, and I wasn't compensated for it. It really made me mad and upset. And I went on Twitter and I said, you know, if you steal my ideas, you're basically stealing from me because my ideas are currency. So I combined that with like the brainiac, and that's what made me come up with this brain bank. And the word nuclei comes from my ideology on creativity being a science. And how the two are really connected. I've always looked at the mind as a very pivotal piece in creativity, your outlook, how you think about things, how you think through things. And I do think that the best ideas come from critical thinking. So I wanted to create a brand that made intelligence cool and made critical thinking more of a fun activity instead of just a chore.
Tell me how the brain bank works.
Okay, so the brain bank is a piggy bank in the shape of a brain. It's designed to store your ideas and to promote critical thinking while also elevating whatever space you're in. I think it looks really great right here. Shout out to the on-set interior designer who put this together. But I wanted a product that would promote critical thinking. And it comes with this really dope notepad that looks like money, but you are supposed to write your ideas down on it because your ideas are currency. And I kind of want to hear from you while you're doing this. Like, does it promote critical thinking? Like, how are you feeling?
So a couple of things. One, I'm a big believer in ideas. So I see this notion of United States of ideas. So that gets me excited because I think that ideas move, change, and shape the world. There's also something that's interesting here, which is there's not a ton of room. And I believe that great ideas are simple. But there also are maybe 4 or 5 lines, which tells me like, again, you can get to like the journey. You got to be sharp and tight with your ideas, right?
Yes.
Which I also very much love. So yeah, I'm excited. I already have some things that are intriguing to me that I want to write down. So then go ahead and just throw it down. Do you want me to tell you about it?
Actually, yeah, like write it down. I think we can share both of our ideas.
Okay, deal.
Okay,
Is this an idea you're already going to work on and launching, or is this a new idea?
I'm gonna do one that I'm about to launch.
Okay, me too. I'm cheating because I wrote down 2 ideas.
It's okay. That's good. Don't spend it all in one place.
All right. You want to go first or you want me to?
You can go.
Okay. So I'll do this one first. So the first one I wrote is launching a woman's vertical for REVOLT. This is something that's probably been, in general, as a leader, as someone who's been in the space, I've always had a heart for Black women, for their unique struggles, for their unique situations, causes, etc. And then as about maybe May of last year, like I just started feeling something in my belly that was like, you have this platform called REVOLT. It is time to enable Black women to lead their own revolution, right? Like be one of the pieces in the puzzle that allows for that. And so that's what we're going to do this year. And I'm super, super excited. I think hip hop runs the world, but I think that Black women run it from an influence standpoint, from a grassroots perspective, right? Like you can't have
a community leader.
Exactly. Right. So like, I'm excited about being able to combine those 2 things and live at the intersection of both of those things, hip hop and Black women. And I'm excited. I hope, I live my entire life for impact. Everything that I do, I want it to be impactful. And so while I think there's a lot that we have to do to really think about what this vertical should be and can be and will be, I'm excited to just get it off of the ground. burn all the ships and go figure it out, right?
Amazing. That was a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so now you got to put it in there.
Boom. Ideas are currency.
Yes.
Okay.
And it fits. It fits like
perfectly. Mm-hmm. Tell me about yours.
My idea is a creative DNA test. Kind of like a creative horoscope. I had started this idea while I was building Nuclei because I was thinking about this idea of everybody is a creative, but not everybody believes that they are creative. Sure. So I'm like, how can I get people that may not think that they're creative, think that they are creative? And I was like, I want to do like a creative DNA, like personality quiz to ask a few questions to get people to see themselves as a creative. And it's set to launch very, very soon. It's probably going to be out by the time this video comes out. But it's a really dope concept. I got inspired. First of all, I love taking personality quizzes. I love learning about myself. Again, like going back to learning. So the quiz is going to tell you your 3 dominant creative traits, and the traits have nothing to do with an actual creative medium. So my creative traits are reflective, intuitive, and aesthetic. So that means that a lot of what I create is based on how I reflect on things, being inspired by myself, while also factoring in different visuals. So there's 6 creative traits total. There are over 600 different combinations. And once you find out about your trait, you can find out about what creative careers are good for those traits, who you should work with, what other traits you should work with or collaborate with. So yeah, that's my idea.
Yeah, I love the idea, and personally, I honestly can't wait to take the test myself.
Yeah,
I want to take it. Even just listening to you talk about it, we've been sitting here for 1 hour, and everything you just said about your own DNA, like it rings so loud and true to me, right? Like you're a very reflective person, all about your intuition and following your instinct. So anyways, it got it right for you, so I'm excited to see.
Yes. I'm gonna send it to you. It's like the beta is live. I'm just working on like the aesthetics of it right now. But I would love to get your feedback.
I would love to. I'm a big believer. There's a book called Still Like an Artist, and he talks about how the way you get to great creativity is you study the greats, people who you love. And then once you bring all of their stuff into who you are and push that out, something new is born.
Yeah.
So my last question for you is, who are your greats? Like, who do you study? Who inspires you? Who do you follow?
Pharrell, Aaliyah, Virgil, Andy Warhol. Who else do I study?
I mean, that's an incredible list that you just...
and Kanye and Rihanna. Okay. Those kind of like my people that it don't matter what they do, is always hard, always hard, always fly, and always them. Like I feel like everybody that I listed pushed the envelope and did it their own way and flipped whatever industry that they were in on its head.
Well, Queen, thank you for joining me today. This has been an incredible conversation. So many lessons learned. Like I'm just thinking back through your story. This notion of like being different and unique and leaning into your differences and your uniqueness. I love this idea that you have found where so much of your life decisions feel like they are driven by, you have such a great respect for who you are on the inside, right? Getting to peace about decisions that you're making, even if they're really difficult decisions, like let me quit this job and move over here in 2 weeks, right?
I don't believe in right or wrong. I believe in, am I going to be comfortable with it? Because right or wrong can shift depending on the perspective or the lens that you're looking at. But comfort, I think, is something that's long lasting. So that's kind of like my moral compass.
Well, thank you for coming and blessing us. I hope that the audience and people get to take so much from this conversation. You dropped so many gems, so much wisdom.
Thank you.
I'm grateful to have you here. Thank you for being on the Blackprint this year.
Thank you.
What an incredible conversation with DonYé. She is a bright light, a beautiful human, and a creative spirit. One of the things that I love about our conversation is she talks about how she recognizes that as a creative visionary, that person who often has that dream or that imagination that is 10, 20 steps ahead of where everyone is. She's learned in her age that now she has to not only have that vision, but bring people along with her. And so she talks about closing that gap between the vision and where people are by educating people along the way. The second thing that I love that she talked about consistently throughout the conversation, and she kept coming back to her intuition or her gut and her instinct. Incredible that she was able to build confidence and learn to trust her instinct at such a young age. And you can just see how it has stuck with her and guided with her through her journey. And so even when it comes down to the work that she's putting out into the world, she's just like, unless I feel at peace in my spirit, unless I feel at peace with what I'm making and putting out into the world, I don't do it. She also had this idea where she said she had given up on the idea of perfection. It's not important to be perfect. It's important to be at peace with what I put out into the world. And so I just love that she has this intuition that she has learned to trust, lean on, and depend on for her creative craft. Another thing she spoke about that I think is incredibly important is about making sure that we are always partnering and pairing up with like minds. I think that's true both on the personal side as well on the professional side. And for her, her story comes out in Ethica, where she has a partner at the time that's working with her both in that company and in the company that they have together. And just realizing that whether it was Ethica or whether it was a consulting company that her and her partner had, that they had different ideas of greatness, that they had different ideas of what they wanted to put out into the world. And when you are partnered for life, because business is life, when you are partnered with people who have different visions, it breaks. She has the confidence to walk away from it all. And the last thing that she talked about that sticks with me is this notion of representation and the importance of representation in our lives. As a young child, she talks about growing up in PG County where Black people were represented in everything. I don't know, from the mayor's office to the doctors, etc., and what that did for her confidence. She also talks about the importance of representation, where she didn't believe that you could have a real career in a creative space. And it's not until she walks into a marketing company and sees people like her that she realizes that this is a dream that she can pursue. And so for those of us along the way who are on our own kind of creative journeys, remembering that it is important to show the world that you're here, that your light matters, because representation matters. And so sometimes people just knowing that you exist is enough to spark the dream that can change the world.